And let me introduce our two speakers tonight. So we have on one side, and these are like very, I would say, typical and atypical profiles, and two ways of actually doing business and internationalizing in a different country. So on one side, we have Vincent. Vincent worked in early life after EDEC in France at France Telecom and Telmex, but basically just straight away move outside to France to kind of build a first life in Mexico, where he created the company Dromadaire, which is this electronic and personalized greeting cards that we all know about if we're coming from France. So first company creations in '98, which is for us a few years ago. And from there, started to build additional companies around that themes with All Print, bringing back to all this, like All Print is basically a little bit like Vistaprint, coming back to Paris to build this entire business. They did this for 7 years, and then created Malt in 2012. Which, as you probably know by now, is a freelance platform that brings and match companies that would like to hire or get freelancers for a typical project in IT. And today, Malt has, I think, 200,000 freelancers, is working for 30,000 companies. Vincent, you are leading a team of 220 employees. And you have now a presence in 3 countries. After Spain in 2017, you decided to move to Germany in 2019. Not only your company, but also your family, and we'll come back to this in a moment. So this is Vincent. On the other hand of the spectrum, we have Adrian. And Adrian, after 7 years in consulting and did a bit of operational marketing in some large conglomerates in Paris, also decided to kind of move to Germany. But Adrian has more of a German background because you are both nationalities, so French, German. And instead of like starting from scratch, like any entrepreneur would do and starting your own business, you decided to actually focus and build an expertise in franchises and bringing concepts that have been very successful in the French ecosystem into Germany. You started in April 2011 with the first Yellow Corner shop in Cologne, built this throughout Germany with, I guess, 10 plus stores across the country. And then decided to do the same for Babilou, which is kind of a daycare center for children and kind of a kindergarten here in Germany. Again, a very successful French concept that you then established in Germany with now 3 brands, 5,000 children that you take care of, maybe not you yourself, but with 1,250 employees. So again, a success story of the French concept into a German ecosystem, but a different way of internationalizing with this master franchise. So this is a little bit of the context for our attendants, since I don't know if they know so well your 2 companies and your 2 backgrounds. And I'm coming to my first question to you guys. How did you actually jump into entrepreneurship? Was it a dream that you were striving for in your youth? Did you decide very early on to become an entrepreneur? Who wants to start?
I can start if you want. Hello, everyone. So as you said, I did a business school, EDEC, and there was actually an entrepreneurship program that I didn't do. I was planning to work in marketing. I did my last internship in Nestle, and I was passionate about marketing and retail goods. So no, it was really like, well, I think there was something, probably in my personal background, that I'm not coming from a family of entrepreneurs, but I think I've always been interested in, yes, entrepreneurship stories. And then I guess it's part of luck, and I like a lot the word serendipity, and catching the good things, and in the end, after school, as you said, like with a friend of mine from school, his father, who was an entrepreneur, introduced us, I think, to the idea, and we that was the first years of internet, and we had an idea and we started building on this, but it was really random, and I guess that once you taste it, it's difficult to go back.
And for you, Adrian?
Hi, everyone. So yeah, same for me. It's not something I've, dreamed of for my whole childhood, but it's something that you come across. And especially, as you said, I didn't start my career as an entrepreneur, but I was working in different larger corporations, started my career as a consultant and saw a lot of big companies. But then by chance, I ended up working for a rather entrepreneurial company called WebHelp, which is by now a French unicorn, but at that time rather an entrepreneurial company. And I think once you start to breathe the air of entrepreneurship and you feel a match between that air and your lungs, basically, I think that this is the kind of connection that it's difficult to not to follow. I think Vincent, you mentioned something about the parent of the partner you built your first company with. I think that the ecosystem in which you grow also, and the people you meet either in your family or in the circle of your family or friends also have an influence. And I don't have entrepreneurs in my family, but my father, he's also he has been independent his whole life, and I think those are the kind of role models, what these influences that make you either fitted for entrepreneurial companies or entrepreneurial startup structures or larger corporations. So, yeah.
And I'm going to actually go back to this. You mentioned that it's the ecosystem, it's the influence of others, but very early you decided to jump into entrepreneurship. So do you think that the corporate ecosystem that you actually started with, so at France Telecom, at WebHelp, even if it was kind of an entrepreneurship experience, do you think like you need to gather professional experience, like the standard professional experience before jumping? Do you think that's useful for you? That gives you a network to leverage then for your entrepreneurial journey and starting your own business? Or you would actually advise now entrepreneurs to start right after school and then just do it?
Well, that's a big question always, and I think we all have we know the stories, of the Larry Page and Sergey Brin and Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and dropping out of university and starting something. So I think in a way I did this just after school, but then I came back, to more traditional thing and corporate and another way to see it. If you see the stats of successful entrepreneurs. The better success rate are in between, I think, 35 to 45 years old. So I think that is true what you were saying, and I don't give an advice. That I think going out of school is very good because you don't have problems in a way of having a family, etc. You can take risk. But on the other side, doing it later, I think gives you much more experience, much more network, as you said. But I think the experience is super important. For instance, if you're in B2B, in a B2B company, you're going to be selling to companies. So if you don't understand how these companies work, because you have never worked there, I think it's super hard to do what you have to do. So I think that, yes, it can be a good way also to gather experience before being an entrepreneur in most cases. But some people are lucky, and I admire them, to have success right after school or right very, very young.
I fully agree with that. I'd say that if entrepreneurs start very young, because they want to, they have this idea, and they also have the confidence and the sort of maturity that you need, even if they're still young. I think that one thing that you can do is, I'd say, compensate this lack of experience, potentially of network, by onboarding also people in your team that have more experience than yourself. And that's something that I've seen only in a few startups, is that usually they onboard only very young people, so basically their age or even younger, so basically in their own, let's say, close community or network. And not necessarily broaden the field of search and broaden also in terms of age and then bringing in that experience and potentially that networks that is that could be compensated and that is key for success, especially if you're into things like sales and B2B sales, like Vincent was mentioning.
Yeah, I guess you pretty much hire, or you live in your ecosystem of people that look like you. So I guess that's the reason why young entrepreneurs would hire young talents as well. But it's good to also see that you can supplement your skills and maybe kind of fulfill your weaknesses, Adrian, as you said, by having this more experienced people in your team that can bring what you don't have, which is the network or the experience of larger groups. Nevertheless, I mean, if I look at your profile, Vincent, you went from purely B2C, you know, Dromadaire, okay, or print could actually be a B2B model, but then to Malt, which is also a different sector, different field, different business model. So question to you, how did you actually come up with the idea? Was that more of a passion of yours, or did you actually identify a problem that you, like in your day-to-day routine, that you wanted to solve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you didn't mention I was also a florist in Mexico at some point.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You had an online
online flower shop. So yes, I've been a florist, a printer, but maybe like the common ground for Adrian would be retail, or having physical location. For me, it was online.
People is my common ground. People.
Sorry? Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
People business.
Yeah, right. I think that yes, the most of the time, I don't believe, you know, and I've seen that in some cases, you know, very smart people creating a team and going to a room and analyzing a market and doing their business plan and saying, okay, there's an opportunity there, etc. Most of the time, I think that fails. I think that you need passion, you need to live what you're doing, and so I think, yes, most of the time things comes from first a need. So to be precise on this, yes, I've been many times, and the previous business I had many times in the situation where I was looking for a developer, I was looking for a graphic designer to complete my team. And there were platforms to find them. There were platforms, but they were mostly oriented to find people, you know, in India or in Bangladesh, doing small tasks only online and with a community of freelancers who were mostly lower skilled, I would say. Thought there was a different way to approach the thing, and so that's how I started the thing. So to answer your question, yes, I think you start always by a very personal or need. Personal doesn't mean like in your personal life, but also your professional life, and that's also why I think in average people who start a company older are more successful, because if you're just out of being a student, you have student needs. Student needs can be creating Blablacar, for instance. You know, you had to go from place to another, and you had this need, so that's great. But your needs are very limited and very B2C mostly. When you have more experience, you have had the needs as a company, as a manager in a company. So you've seen a lot more possibilities.
You had a broader view. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for you, I guess, Adrian, like the fact that, you know, you were expanding a concept successful in one country to another one, you had that ability through your experience to actually identify things that could actually work in an international setup, right?
Yeah. So exactly.
So tell us a little bit, how do you choose this exact franchise from a Yellow Corner to Babilou, and the next one, which will be the surprise in a few minutes.
Okay. So the first point is actually what Vincent is mentioning is the need and making sure or analyzing if what has been successful in France in this case can be successful tomorrow in Germany, and if the criteria that made that company a success would also apply to the customers, or whoever the target would be in Germany. And to give you the example of Babilou, you didn't need to be an expert in the area of childcare to know, when I looked at that business and industry, to call it that way, even if it's not an industry and not a business, but still, in 2014, to see that the potential and the need in Germany was extremely high in the childcare. So in that case, typically the box ticking of the need and the possibility to make this French success a German success as well was very, very clear. The second aspect beyond this need and the potential of a business and of a proven business case in a country to be established in the other one was obviously the topic of people, because for me, in my specific situation of being an entrepreneur or intrapreneur, so basically being within an existing company but starting a local business, the important topic was obviously the people, because so the founders of the French companies were basically people I've each time felt like I will gonna found my company with those guys. They will be my co-founders, they will be my partners, they will be my sparring partners. So the match needs to be as perfect as if you want to found a company with a co-founder. So that was the second criteria, which obviously led my choices and also influenced my decisions much more than my personal need, as Vincent gave the example, or my personal affection to one sector, to one product, to one service. So it was much more on those two criteria, on the match and the success criteria. Will they be applicable to Germany? And the second part about the people, and especially the founders that I would meet. And specifically in those discussions, making sure that the way we would work together, so myself as a local founder basically, and themselves as the founder of the group, of the company in France, that we would define my role and the entrepreneurial spirit of my role in the same way, which is not standard, I would say, or you can live this relationship in many ways. And that was also one very important criteria before I chose to build up Yellow Corner in Germany, to build up Babilou in Germany.
And if I may, Sabine, one interesting thing in your question is that if you see, when you have a need, you're by definition an outsider from the industry. So I think that each of us, we don't come from this industry. Like I don't come from this HR industry, agency industry, staffing industry. So that's why you can reinvent this industry also. So it's important to have the experience and to visualize the need, but you're not necessarily coming directly from that same industry. See what I mean?
Yeah. I think we lost Adrian. I know Adrian is back. But I guess in your two profile, what I'm very surprised about, or I found a little bit kind of interesting, is that you, Vincent, took something from a need from an industry that you didn't know, and you started from scratch to kind of build a solution for that need. And Adrian, you would have had the opportunity to actually build from scratch in Germany and create the next Babilou without having the founders. So, what makes you like, and maybe Vincent, another actually point is maybe you find something which was very similar in the US, but not satisfying 100% your needs. Like I'm thinking about a GitHub or a TopTal. And therefore you said, okay, like, I'm not going to expand exactly this to France. I'm going to actually build it myself. But Adrian chose the other option, which is expanding that concept to another country. So pros and cons of these two approaches.
Maybe to answer indirectly the question, why didn't I, found companies from scratch? I think the first entrepreneurial move was Yellow Corner. It was just a combination of, I was moving from France to Germany at that time. So it was already, that change with taking my family with me. And so I thought I'd do an in-between, let's say, by founding something locally, but having a base or having a, proof of concept, having also partners. So basically also saving a lot of time when building the company. So and probably for myself, it was also a way to test the entrepreneurial project without going the full way. And and then the reason why after I decided to leave Yellow Corner and to start a new adventure, the reason why I did the same model is because I really at the time was convinced by this French-German approach and French-German combination and way also of working with existing founders, as I mentioned before, which I loved about the structure I had with Yellow Corner. I love about what I have with Babilou, and I hope I love in the future with other ventures coming. So basically, I ended up in this kind of intrapreneur French-German model by chance, and kept doing the next project.
It's been working.
Yeah.
And I guess
you
you repeat also worked for you and you've experienced in the past, and like I wanted to, when I started this company in Mexico, it was called Algo Especial, like delivering flowers. I talked with people from France, from Aquarelle, which is a very successful online flower shop in France at the time and still now. And they were asking, you know, for this concept of franchise, something like 200,000 euro to start with this idea. I think they didn't understand, you know, that the most important was having the people, you know, motivated to do that. But they were asking me for money, and I was 24 years old, and I didn't have 200,000 euros. So I said, no, thank you. So I found a developer, I found a designer, and we started the thing our own way. So I don't know if we would have been more successful or not. I really don't know. But since I started like that, I repeated this pattern. I guess for Adrian, another pattern worked, and that's it.
Yeah, it's building on your strengths, I guess. Looking back at this expansion theme, you know, you both French, Adrian is also German, but you both kind of immigrated to Germany to continue or, you know, build on a certain business. How did it start? Like, what was the kind of first thing when you started that you had to put in place? You had a successful entry to Spain. I guess maybe that served as a blueprint, Vincent, when you went to then Germany, and why Germany? Is that a good market for a freelance platform?
Yeah. So yes, we started in Spain because it's usually I would say an easier market for the cost of entry in terms of everything, salaries, advertising, everything is lower. So it's a good way to start, and you know you're going to make a lot of mistakes at the beginning, I guess. So your playbook, your internationalization playbook is not great, like it's not at all defined, and you need to refine it actually all the time. So I think we made all the mistakes. We learned a lot. Probably we thought, but that was not possible at the time because the company was not big enough in Paris. So I needed to stay in Paris, but I would have been like, it would have been very productive that I could be, or one of the founders team could have been in Spain, which we did later. Like now our CEO is in Spain. And then when we considered Germany, so what I did is basically calling a few entrepreneurs, French entrepreneurs who made it in Germany, like they had success in Germany, and some others who didn't. And it was not like a very quantitative analysis, but what I found is, and people were very sure that a big difference in the success was the fact that they were here. And I think it's a complicated market. It's a huge market. It's the biggest market in Europe. It's a market very different from France, for instance, because it's very decentralized. And I think it's very important. And why I really chose to come here is well, I think there are many reasons, but one is to show the rest of the company. So we're almost 200 in France, that yes, Germany or Spain, and not only France, is important. So to really calibrate, I would say, the center of the company. And then I think it's very important also for the team here. If you want to have success in the end, it's having the right people. So you need to put, how do you say, skin in the game, and you need to really show that you're committed to it, that you're going to be here and make it a success, and that's very important for the company. And so then people are accepting to join you. The great people, they want to join the great story, very ambitious. They just don't want to be in a satellite office of a company in France. So that's why I made that choice. And last but not least, Munich is a very nice city for family life. So that was also a plus.
Yeah, just to reiterate for our audience, Vincent, who is the founder and CEO of Malt, actually moved his entire family to Munich, which for me, it's like I've never heard of a founder like actually moving to a country where they're expanding to. They usually stay in their headquarters. But Paris is still your headquarters. Or how do your investors see this? And I've actually read your email to your employees.
Oh, yeah?
When you actually announced.
Where did you find it? Okay.
That you were. It was on your Medium because you published it. when you published or announced that you were actually moving with your family?
They were very supportive for all these reasons, and we talk about it for a moment. They know also, and I think that as an entrepreneur, you're probably a better entrepreneur than a manager or managers. And so doing the 0 to 1 is something that you like to do and that you know how to do. Now we're at a stage, and a bigger stage in the company, where we hired, some people. So one I would say mandatory thing to do is that we recruited a managing director in Paris that can take most of the business there. And so yes, they were very supportive, and for one reason is basically I think we need to have more stories of French German success, because when you see the world of tech now, it's basically China and the US, and Europe is very small. So if we want to have the scale that European company needs, they need to be successful at least in Germany and France. And if we are successful in Germany and France, as Malt, well, we'll be able to go probably everywhere in Europe. So you've been an investor. You are an investor. You know how it is. If company is international, the valuation is totally different. So showing that we're able to do that, and we're super committed to it, is very important.
And for you, Adrian, like, you had a first experience of kind of expanding this concept to Germany. What type of blueprint or framework? What are like the key success factors for you when you started expanding Babilou? Like, you had some already key learnings, I guess.
I fully agree with Vincent's point on showing presence in the country where you want to open, either by moving, as Vincent made this big step with his family. And by the way, the founder of Babilou, Rodolphe Karl, also decided with his family in 2014 to move to Munich, and so he spent a couple of years here and basically built up, or was with me while we built up the company here. And it was clear that first, his presence here was really helpful to make clear to potential partners, to potential customers here, that it was really the next big step for this company, for Babilou Group. And it was also, as Vincent was saying, a clear message internally saying that it was just not a little, subsidiary somewhere starting, or another project or another crazy idea of the founder, but it was the next big thing and the next, big also growth potential for the company. So I think that's somehow linking the story and the presence of the founders, or of the, let's say, the headquarter and the person of the founder, to the launch of the new country or the subsidiary is critical and is key. And it's also a way of showing to local partners that you're serious about what you're doing in that country. And you always have to keep that balance between you're already somehow big and successful in your own country, but you want to, start from scratch, and you're very humble. You're going to have to adapt your product, adapt the way you communicate, adapt according to the needs that you meet locally that might not be 100% the same. And that is a balance that is sometimes I think hard to find between bringing that success and saying we already know everything about everything, but we take you as, if you start in Germany, as German, potential partners, new customers, with a lot of respect and with a lot of we start from scratch attitude, which I think is also key. So finding that combination of we're already strong and we have presence and we have abilities and potentially also money to invest, because in some industries you will, need to start with spending a lot of cash or capex to start the business. But on the contrary, being very humble about we know a lot, but we want to start from scratch and we're here to understand. And that's where the local team and having someone locally with, I think, the local language, the local culture is also very important.
And actually, to that point, like concretely, how did the first 100 days look like? I mean, we have two completely different business models here. We have one which is more of a marketplace. Everything pretty much is, software, which of course has a matching component between two entities, freelancers and corporates. On the other hand, Adrian, you are dealing with, for Yellow Corner stores, for Babilou kindergarten, so actually assets, physical assets. If I kind of go back in time, and if we look back at what were your first 100 days in Munich, what did you have to tackle first in terms of, team setup? I don't know, regulations, getting to know Invest in Bavaria and Eva.
I think that I'm not sure that our first 100 days were that successful. So I don't know if it's a blueprint for everyone. I would say that you even probably need 300 days or 365 days to make all the mistakes and understand. What we did is first we had someone who had the role of country launcher. So Shiraz, she went first to Spain. She spent some time in Spain with the country manager there. She wrote the playbook, understood the things, and then she did the same. She went to Berlin. First, what we did is that we met a lot of potential partners, competitors, even companies that we could acquire. We were doing that, going back and forth from Paris to Germany. Then we recruited a country manager here who helped us set up, the first phase of the company here, the first team, etc. What I think I would have done differently and better is the first 100 days I was still a lot too much in Paris because I was still managing the Paris office. And that was a mistake because you need to be sure to be 100% committed. You cannot do that just one day a week, and being in the office, meeting the people. And I didn't, feel a lot of things that I could have felt being more with the team, knowing them, having lunch with them, etc. That's the whole point of being here. So I was too much at the beginning going back and forth and not, really involved in Germany. I think that after a year, COVID came, but after a year, and for me, it's been just a few months that I'm really thinking, okay, I live here, I work here, and the team where I spend most of the time is here. But it's very difficult, It's the story about the BCG metrics and your star product or your how do you say, your Bachelet co whatever. So yeah. So you have a big business in France, so it's very hard, to from one day to the other to stop everything and not watching it. So you need to make sure that everything is ready for that before, I would say, going to another country.
And for you, Adrian?
I'd say that the most challenging part of the first 100 days or 30 days, to put it as a short term, is to make sure that you prepare before you really, start knocking on the doors you want to knock at. Because as I said before, you start potentially with this huge, conviction that you have a successful business model, you have a great story to tell, and you have all those proof of concept elements that you bring from France to Germany. But you need to make sure that, as I said before, you've adapted that, you have adapted your product, your service, your story, your business plan, and also the way you do business to the local partners that you wanna knock on the door. And that's, I think, also one of the challenging aspect is to say, well, let's first, take the time to make that preparation. So to adapt our pitch, to adapt even our documentation and stupid things like being ready to start business tomorrow. So setting up a local structure, being able to bring to a meeting with a German guy a business card, which is maybe not so relevant in France, but it is relevant in Germany, and things like that, where you say, well, I just want to shoot and start the discussion and tell my story and start business. And on the other hand, you're like, okay, I don't want to be seen as a one-man show or, a person who's too confident, but I want to be prepared, basically. And that's something that is sometimes frustrating because you want to go fast and you want to really start talking to the person you want to talk to, and not start first talking to a lawyer or to an accountant or to a banker to set up the legal structure and things like that. But those are important things to be able to start a business and to be able to be seen as a real serious option when you start a yellow corner in Germany and you want to rent a prime location is in a top street in Munich, Cologne, or whatever the city you're looking at, and the people you're competing with are H&M and other big chains like that, and you're basically coming there with a great, conviction that yellow corner is the next thing for the city of Cologne, but to convince that landlord, you have to bring much more than just your conviction, and you have to make that preparation, which can be frustrating, but is really important.
And this preparation that you're talking about, is that coming from market analysis, talking to people? I know Vincent, you're a very strong networker. You've tried to kind of understand the culture here as well. Meeting as many people as possible to understand a little bit what might be different, how you need to probably adapt your product, or how things could work differently in Germany versus in France. Same with you, Adrian. On the Babilou, I think, like we all know that kindergarten, motherhood, etc., is very different between France and Germany. Yeah. How many months kids stay at the kindergarten. So how do you actually adapt your product without completely reinventing it? And how do you also, second question, find the talent that will drive this success in the local market? Like, what are the skills that makes a country manager very good for you, in your opinion?
Go ahead. No.
Yeah, just maybe one thing on the preparation part. I think the key question you need to answer is, why is the person I want to, start business with knock on the door? What are the questions he's going to raise, and why this concept of the French guy knocking on my door, basically, or the French company that I've never heard of knocking on my door? What are the questions he's going to be raising, and trying to answer those, because those are the ones that are interesting. It's not only interesting about why you are convinced, why your French story is great, and why your French proof of concept is also a good starting point for your German business, but it's all the question that this person's going to have when you're going to start your story, and you're going to come with the French story or part of the story, and those can be about adapting the product or the service to the local needs, but it can be also things like legal elements, like what are the links between the German company that you're building and the French company, and who's my partner if tomorrow we sign a contract, and things like that, which can be the first thing that pop into the mind of your potential partner that you wanna engage with.
Yeah, and I think, yes, you can do, and it's very important to do this market analysis before, and you can have super clever people like doing that. But I think at one point the theory needs to go on the ground, and you need to start talking with customers, and you will have a slightly or very different story. So it's very important to go on the ground. I think the question, like where most companies and can fail on that, on internationalization, is the question of speed. The thing is that we all have, the image of, rocket internet, for instance, going to 12 countries in 6 months, but well, the context is super particular and everything. But when you see the truth, like even companies like Google or Facebook or companies like that, or Netflix, sometimes they had 1 or 2 people during 1 or 2 years, on the ground, just to the market, to see a lot of things, and then they accelerate, much faster. I think it's a mistake to go too big, too fast right at the beginning, and that's a mistake we made here. And it's related to your question about talents, because if you hire too fast, well, you're going to make mistakes, okay? And you're also going to make a mistake because, well, when we started in Germany, we were at that time, I don't know, now we are recruiting probably 10 or 20 people every month in Paris, okay? So you say, okay, I'm going to start Germany, I'm going to do maybe not the same, but I'm going to do 20 people every 6 months or for the year, And it's not true. You cannot, like, I realized that you're not recruiting the employee number 201, 202 in Germany. No, you're recruiting the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 of Germany. And these are different people. The people that you recruit in a 200 people company in France, they can be super good, they can be super expert, but it's not the same people who are, very entrepreneurial. There's this book called The Founder's Mentality, and they talk about not just the founders, but the founding team, the very first employee, and they call them the heroes. And they're heroes because they can do everything. They can, there's an event tomorrow, they go to the Edeka, they buy the beer, and the next day they talk to a C-level at a very big company. These are special kind of people, and the people that you recruit for managing people or managing managers in fund are not the same. So you need to go a bit back to the basics, back to entrepreneurship, I think, and not thinking that it's just an extension of your strategy in your main market.
So it's interesting because you're basically considering the German office as a new entrepreneurship adventure, as a new entity, not completely separated, but still growing at its own speed with the right talent for each stage compared to the French HQ or entity.
Now I see it that way. You need to use whatever you can use from the HQ that can help you to grow faster. But when the HQ puts too much, makes you slower, or puts too much process, when you have to consider it like a very small startup.
Fully agree. You have to, be able to run that subsidiary as if it was its own an own startup, and to limit as much as possible, let's say, group decisions or group constraints, especially during the first and the launch of the subsidiary. The more the company grows locally, the more you want to structure your group, you want to set up group processes, maybe group tools, that's fine. But at the beginning, you have to let that subsidiary live as its own life with its own dynamics, its own people. And as Vincent was saying, I think you're looking for people who basically are willing to build up a company from almost scratch, and so you're looking at other profiles than the ones you're recruiting at the same time in your HQ, and you're also looking at people that are not necessarily coming from the same networks. We were talking before or at the very beginning about ecosystem and people you tend to work with or work with. And when you are an entrepreneur funding its company in France, suddenly you get out of your grande école de commerce or whatever your network is, and you have to, first understand what are the degrees and the good universities, or what type of, people you want to look for and how you look for them, because there are no such networks or not equivalent. So I think it's a completely new start, and you have to be able to accept that there's a new entity growing as a startup within your group.
And so how do you keep the culture kind of in a common, or how do you bring like the culture of Malt or the culture of Yellow Corner Babilou kind of standard across all these geographies when you regard each entity as a separate one?
For me, that's why some of the key people like founding team are the best one to travel and go and launch a new country. And yes, and now our CEO is in Madrid for the same reason, for bringing the culture. Super important. Yeah.
And you, Adrian, how did you actually transfer some of the cultures that you didn't pretty much experience from the founder at the very beginning, but try to kind of mirror that culture back in Germany?
Well, actually, that comes back to what I was saying initially about the choice of the company I decided to, let's say, bring to Germany. It was based also on the people I met, and making sure that if we talk now about values or things like that, that I was sure that what I was seeing in the company and the way those founders built their company in France, I was sure that we would meet on the same ground, and that if I had to found something from scratch completely, I would choose the same values or build it along the same ways. And I said so basically it's about people, and as Vincent was saying, in his case, it's people moving from France to other countries to explain. In my case, it's myself making sure that the values I want to bring to the companies that I built are in line with what the people did before in France, basically. And that's how I made the decision with the Yellow Corner or with Babilou by making sure that those people were matching the way I would have done it.
Yes, and
so you're still, both of you, very much involved in the recruiting process, I guess.
you mean here in Germany? Well, yes, like a lot. Yes, no, of course, no, and probably yes, much more than 1 year ago, where I was between Paris and here, and I realized that yes, you have to be like really involved, and that's super important, and also maybe related to that question of culture. I guess you also, Adrian, spent a lot of time at the beginning in Paris in the main office, and what we do is that we spend a lot in travel. So not now, but every people that starts here has a 1 week onboarding in Paris, at least, But then there's a very open policy on expenses where you need to take a train or plane to go to Paris, or someone from Paris wants to come to Munich and help on a subject. We don't ask them, to justify why they do it. We encourage them to do so. We also have a buddy program where every new, and in particular people who are not in the HQ, every new employee has a buddy that will help him or her in the first few months, to understand who to talk to, etc. But in particular for the people who lead a country, I think it's super important at the beginning to spend a few weeks or even a few months in the country.
And I would even expand that at some point in time to the local management team. So it's not only one person. So the local CEO who should be the main contact point of your HQ, but as soon as you build the local management team as well, you have to make sure that those people really feel the culture of the HQ, that they have their counterparts, that they know them well, that they build a personal relationship. And the first trip where I took my German Babilou management team to the French HQ, it was just fantastic in terms of energy, in terms of motivation, in terms of culture for both sides, actually, not only for my local German management team, but also for their counterparts in France who also saw, okay, we have a big serious team in Germany. It's not only a concept, it's also people, and so it was really for both sides an amazing time and an amazing experience. So yeah.
And so I didn't want to kind of talk about COVID, but I think for this question and for the transition, this is a little bit quite interesting for maybe entrepreneurs as well. How do you do it now? Like, how do you build this culture when you cannot travel anymore?
Well, it's not
do you have any tools or any best practices that could help any of the audience bring this culture between different countries?
Yeah, in our case, our HR team is super active on that since the beginning, and organizing a virtual random coffee, where you randomly put with someone else in another country or other team to meet them. We've always had all hands meeting where people can ask all kind of questions, and we are very transparent on where the company is and our figures for everyone. And we try to yes, we have that with obviously our countries. So and then the managers have a big role in that, in making sure that the people are connected. But it's not easy. I think it's not the best year for starting in a new country, for instance. Not for this, but for another reason, is that the first, client, the first people, your first partners, I think you establish relationship by having them met, physically at least once,
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of business. I mean, and we this year for us is relatively good because we have existing customers, but with new customers, bringing new companies, taking a risk in a way in choosing a new provider is not the best year for that. So starting in a new country where by definition you start by having zero client at the beginning, well, it's harder, but I guess it makes you stronger for the future.
One platform we've been using for quite some time, but which has become even more, important and helpful, especially to on mentioning those aspects of company culture, is Workplace, which is this company internal Facebook platform, which is obviously a way of sharing in a very simple way and in a very informal way, a lot between people that have not necessarily contact every day, that are not necessarily working at the same place in the same part of the organization, and we've extended the usage of workplace lately internationally. So basically, before we were handling workplace country by country, and now we started in some groups of workplace to do like challenges between teams at an international level. So it was, let's say, the next level of using that. And of course, it's not replacing physical exchanges and relationships, but it has been very helpful, and especially in the past 6 months. So yeah. So
workplace for those who want to check this out. No promotion.
No promotion, but very helpful.
But it's a tool that works. Yeah, I think
we use Slack on our side.
Yeah, that's the Slack is the one that is coming back quite often, I must say. Now talking a little bit more specifically between France and Germany, because I see from the audience that we have quite a few French entrepreneurs, German entrepreneurs, and also those that help the startup ecosystem between the two countries to evolve. And I was actually watching Emmanuel Macron yesterday talking to Atomico and having this challenge as a European to have such a fragmented market, so that we don't have the luxury like China or the US to be able to, on first go, access and reach a very significant large size market. So here, I guess bringing France and Germany as two main countries in a startup and successfully scaling across these two countries is kind of a great initiative. What would you say the challenges are when you compare France and Germany, like in terms of team setup, regulation, fundraising? What were your main challenges? I know, Vincent, you didn't speak the language, so that might have already been a barrier. And I'm not even sure you speak it now.
No, because Startup Grind is in English, so you see, I'm not done.
But as a friend, I'm been 10 years here, and my German is not even fluent, but. So what are the encounters that you had between these two countries that could make us smile a bit?
Yeah, well, in our case, I think there are many things, but the first thing is you were talking about. I don't know exactly what Emmanuel Macron said yesterday, but the first thing, I guess, the main challenge is the awareness. When you start, like in France, people know us a lot or relatively well because your HQ is there, you've raised funds there, so you have press talking about you. And I think the main thing, the most difficult thing at the beginning, and there's a question on that I see on the chat, that yes, obviously you start with your own clients in B2B. So for instance, here Sanofi is one of our biggest customer, and it was one of our biggest customer in France, so it helps. But the awareness of the company is zero when you start. But let's take a company like Celonis or like Personio, which are everybody know in Munich. Nobody know them in Paris, and nobody know them in London probably. And even if they raise a lot of money, they are the poster child of Germany. Like we have this big problem whereas when Netflix is entering the French market or German market, all the press is talking about them because they're already very big in a market that everybody is watching and everybody's understanding the language because it's English. So I think the main challenge probably is how to build awareness, and it's not easy, but you can do it. And then the second one is HR. When I talk with a lot of companies who have started French offers in Germany, but it can be the same on the other side. It's finding the right people. So a lot of people actually recommend to the first person you recruit when you start organically in Germany is to recruit a recruiter, and recruit a great recruiter or great headhunter. And I think the market is so tense. There's no unemployment. And particularly in Munich, there's no unemployment in sales, in tech, etc. That you have, and with no awareness, you have to sell yourself very well. So that's one of the reasons I'm here is to show again that we are super committed and we want to be ambitious here. But the main point is having the right people. And once you have the right people, the first team, the first heroes, you can build on that and you can attract other great people. But being super, that's why you cannot go too fast. Like the first 5-10 people are really key, I think, in your strategy.
And I guess also you don't know the universities as well as you know them in France. So having a recruiter helps you actually figure out what is a talent in Germany, or how do you actually assess this?
That's very right. You don't have even outside the background, you don't have the code. So yes, if I know that someone is coming from a great scale up, I don't know, Doctolib in France, I know Doctolib. In here, maybe I wouldn't know, whatever company it is. And also maybe, I don't know, if I'm recruiting a sales, which is particularly hard, it seems, in Germany, if you're recruiting a sales, well, if you've never sold yourself in Germany, if you don't know how the buyers react and what they expect, you don't really know what kind of sales you want to recruit. So yes, this is super difficult when you don't know the language and also the culture.
And you, Adrian, what challenges did you see when you moved to Germany?
Yeah, I fully agree on the people part, and also agreeing that the first people you recruit are the key, because as we were saying before, those are the people who build up your local startup, and the challenge there is as Vincent was saying, to find the right person who helps you do that. So basically the recruiter, who shouldn't be the best friend of your successful recruiter in France, because the successful recruiter in France, he has his own French network and is probably not connected to this equivalent in Munich, because in Germany you're often not talking even about Germany, but then you're looking for someone who's locally implemented in a city where you wanna build up your company. So I think that taking the time to find the right headhunter recruiter who will basically understand what you're really looking for, convince you that he has the right network locally that has those people, and then give that person enough material to make sure that the people don't go to Netflix, who's just launching their subsidiary, or another company that has more publicity than you have, and there will always be. But make sure that you give enough material, and maybe if it's a couple of key people at the very beginning, even spend the money of having those people sent over to France to say, well, I'm not bullshitting you, we actually are a big and successful and exciting company, and we let's pay a visit to Paris, and you'll see that. You can do that even with not only with the HR part, you can do that with the first partners you want to engage with. The gallery in Cologne that I opened, as you said, the first one in Germany, the landlord, I saw that he was not convinced when he talked to H&M or whoever the big guys were, the big names, and seeing myself with my nice presentation and telling great stories about Telekona. I told the guy, well, come over to Paris this weekend with your family, take your wife and kids. It's a 4 hours ride, and I'll show you a bit around the Yellow Corner galleries in Paris. And he said, well, great, I haven't been to Paris for a couple of years, so I'll just, do a city trip and spend 2 hours with you. And, he came back, and basically we were talking about the lease agreement. And that's also, I think, something you can leverage, or you should leverage, when you do recruiting for the first key people, or when you do selling for the first key partners you want to engage with, is really to show.
Yeah, building credibility.
Exactly.
I guess I would say one of the challenges I see as well when comparing to the US and China is Europe is so fragmented that when you are actually expanding into a new country, you might even be faced with competitors. Like there is quite a few other players that are trying to replicate or have already initiated something similar. How do you see this? Has it prevented you from going to certain countries, or is that scaring you at night? How do you see competition in the European market?
In my case, not so much, because I think that maybe because when we started this company, like everybody was telling us, like there are already models on platforms and marketplaces doing the same thing or similar, and in a way it's never exactly the same thing. So I think that one thing that maybe you need to adapt your product, that's for sure, but your culture, the core value of your product, what it is, I think you have to stay, in the same idea. So once it was successful, I think, yes, there are some adaptations and different cultural differences and different clients, but I think the need, again, if we go back to the need that you had, like probably people like in
universal.
It's universal or almost so. So you do market study, you try to understand the market, but in the end, the trends are there. When you're really disrupting a market, the trends are there, and you won't come back.
And you, Adrian, the competition you didn't fear it.
I think as soon as you want to start something, you're gonna have competition anyway, and if you're close to the needs of the people you're trying to convince, and also close personally to that person. So that's why we were talking before about the presence of founders or linking to the people and looking to the culture. So that is things that will in the end convince the people you want to recruit, convince the partners you wanna sign up with. So yeah, I don't think that it's the theory, and then as I was saying before, you can analyze and say where's the biggest gap in the market, and then basically you start up a business where apparently there's no gap, but you're still successful, and you're disruptive, or you're just better than competition, and you're just a better entrepreneur. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So going back also to the needs, as Vincent said. Last question before we open up to the question of the audience is the future. So I know there are like some new endeavors coming up on the side of Adrian. Maybe Vincent, let's start with you. Where is the next country, and are you going to move again to the next country once you've scaled Germany?
That's a good question. Well, first, the future is, I hope, success for me will look as Germany being bigger than France, which can be, because the market is bigger. So that would be a great sign that we've made it here. So we are really focused now on Spain and Germany. We have a local approach in our business. So going like to 10 countries at the same time, I think will be a mistake, and a lot of people have made it in the past. Actually, if you watch companies super successful and really big like Amazon, I think they are in only 8 countries. They are not in Sweden, they're not in Belgium, a lot of them. So no, it's first steps first is to manage to have success here in Germany and Spain, and then we'll see. I think that the good thing about Germany, and probably a difference with France, is that France is very centralized, and also Spain in a way. Like you have Madrid and Barcelona, you have almost everything economically. Germany is very decentralized, so which makes it hard actually for German companies that I've seen that goes to Paris or go to France, because they don't understand that the quality of the product or the service is enough. The people, the connection, the two persona is very important. I think that Germany is a market where probably is more product oriented or service oriented, and the value of it and the process you put. And so the good thing I think about Germany for a company like ours is that you become more mature, because again, that's a very big market, very decentralized. And once you like building your internationalization playbook in Germany, I think makes you much stronger to go in other countries without, in that case, maybe not having one of the founders being on the ground. If you can, I think it's always better. If it's a very big market like in the US, it's necessary, quite probably. But for smaller market, maybe you can have another approach.
And leverage on that one. So US next?
No, I think we have a lot to do with Europe first. I'm very European, so yes, we want to have success in Europe, but again, like 2021 is really like focusing on Germany and Spain, and I don't like to think too much of the future. I think it's good to have a long-term ambition, and yes, you must have dreams and things, but it's also good to be realistic and okay, let's do this very well, and then everything is possible.
Mm-hmm. And so you, Adrian, are you going to apply your franchise playbook to a new venture?
Yeah, exactly. I'll be preparing the post-COVID experience in Munich, and making sure that everyone has a nice place to spend some time once all this will be behind us. And I'm actually starting in January the launch of a new company here. Again, as I said, the French-German model that I've applied in the past 2 ventures, and I'll be launching Big Mama, which is Italian restaurant concept that has been very successful the past few years in France and since this summer in Spain as well, and since last year in the UK in London. So it's the same, a bit the same story. And in France, everyone is talking about it, and here nobody knows it. So so it will be the same challenges that we mentioned before. But I'm really excited and yeah, and looking forward to starting that venture and to the end of COVID, because obviously it's very linked to that, and it's a very challenging time to start that business. And everyone's looking at me when I'm saying that this is weird, it doesn't make sense. And on the contrary, it makes a lot of sense at the moment to start new ideas in that field. So that's what I'll be doing next year.
I think you could basically get a very good prime location in Munich for this in the new year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how to say. Well, guys, I wish you, for both of you, all the success you deserve for your current endeavor and new endeavor. And now I'm going to hand over to Ulrike, who has collected quite a lot of questions. Can now maybe leave the next 15 minutes to see, and please post your questions to the chat, to the Q&A, so that we can also answer your very important topics.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Then I will have a look at the Q&A box, and let's already start with the first one. The first question is it important for you to be a team of co-founders, and was this one of your key success factors? I think we can answer this from a very general perspective, but it would be very interesting also in case of internationalization, because that's the topic we are talking about. So are there any advantages, disadvantages from your perspective? Who wants to?
To be a team to start, right? Well, I don't know if you
team of co-founders. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm understanding well, but well, when you look, and Sabine can say, when you look at very early stage companies, what investors invest is in a team, and usually a team is never one person; it's probably more 3 or sometimes 4, and you need to have people who are with different skills, background sometimes not so much, and sometimes that's not a good thing, I guess, but yeah, some different skills at least. And yes, I think it's important to have a team for internationalization, because as we saw, you will need a lot of brain power and manpower on the ground. So if these people who have the culture, who have done the first 0 to 1, if they can go to other countries like we did with so Quentin, the CEO of the companies in Spain, I'm here, well, that's even better. You don't always have to do that, of course, but at least like all the companies that I see that are doing well with internationalization, one co-founder is like at least like traveling a lot and most of the time like going and relocating if it's a big market.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in my case, as I was mentioning before, the team part and the personality of the founders in France was always, critical for making a decision to launch a company here. And I always wanted to make sure that I felt that the relationship and the way we would work with those founders in France would be as if we were co-founders basically of that company in Germany. And I always felt like I was funding the company in Germany and not, heading a subsidiary or something like that, but founding something here. So I think that this co-founding and team aspect of it is critical to make it a success locally.
Yeah, I'm talking now more and more to the team here as the founding team of Germany. Because yes, I want them to see that probably in 2 or 3 years, they will manage a team of 5 or 10 people and they will grow, and maybe the company will be 100 people. And so they need to, again, if you want that type of people, heroes, entrepreneurial and ambitious, they need to see that, not just that they are an extension of something.
Regarding that point, you already mentioned it before in Sabine's questions, but can you observe something in your team here in Munich that they also kind of get an own culture, an own company culture that is a bit different from the culture that you have in your headquarters in France?
I think it was at one point, maybe, and I think it was not good. It's not that you want people to be all the same. Like we have people with all kind of backgrounds and things, and now nationalities. But I think you need to have the same culture in the way you manage and the way you work together. And of course, there are. I mean, Germans are not French, are not Spanish, etc. But I think you recruit and you work with people who have, want to work in the same kind of environment. So the strong key value, I think, of the company, you need people who will thrive in them, and you need to develop them if needed on the ground. I think it's super important.
Yeah, come back to the question of values. The way you live them can be, slightly different because it's also part of the, local way people, interact or work together. I mean, the relationships at work are not the same if you work in France and if you work with Germany. You have different relationship with your colleagues in those countries, so you cannot just, expect from your German team to, to interact as your French team would do, and the other way around. But if you find this common culture around the values and then translate them into the local way of living them, I think you've done most of the job in terms of a company culture. And then by having, as the example I was mentioning before, having your management teams meeting, you will rapidly see that basically you built up a company around a unique company culture. And I think that's also really important, because as you will grow, the connections between the subsidiary and the HQ will grow, and the interactions and also the value of working more together will become more over time. And if you don't have that culture, and that's if you don't share that culture, that's where the problem will start.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point. I could ask a lot of more questions at that point, but I will hop over to the next question from the audience first. And maybe if we have more time afterwards, I will come back to that. There's one more question. How founder or startup friendly is Germany compared to France, Spain, and other markets you've already worked in? What is your experience?
Well, I don't know. Like I did not properly fund it and looked for investors here and things. So it's a bit hard to say. So I guess there are a lot of similar things. One thing that is surprised me maybe at the beginning is this, this which makes that the network effect that you have in a city like Paris, London, maybe it's more in Berlin. You don't have it, for instance, in Munich. There's not that many events like in Paris, and that's part of getting to meet your investors, your first clients, and then the press and etc. You can go every night. There's an event, and there will be always part of the same people, So and when you go to France Digital Day in September, like you have all the ecosystem there. So it's quite easy to connect to people and to start. Well, it helps a lot, like to meet the first investor, journalists, etc. I think here it's a bit different. It's less obviously it's important who you know, but probably a bit less important, at least in Munich, which is also a good thing, because I guess a lot of entrepreneurs think that their work is being in entrepreneur events. Their work is being in the childcare, is being in the HR resources, human resources. It's so sometimes you can turn in a city like Paris and London to spend your time in all these things. So I think it's good in a city to Munich. You can be really focused on your business.
Adrian, in your case,
I agree that this network effect is maybe much stronger in Paris and much more coded through, you know, education and ecosystem that you basically, you know, grow up with. And here you will find more, I'd say, traditional networks that are not necessarily linked to your studies, but that are potentially not as relevant as they would be in France for growing your business. So it's more challenging on the one hand, but it has more opportunity, I think, especially when you want to expand business as a foreigner. So I fully agree on that with also.
Mm-hmm. And in case of intercultural experience, you've already been talking about this before, but maybe adding something to this question. Here, Katja asks, what has been your most interesting German-French intercultural experience? I would say, what was also maybe your funniest experience, or maybe also something that you didn't have on your screen when you came to Munich in case of cultural difference? Is there any situation you remember and you say, yeah, that was funny, interesting?
I mean, I'll go back to the not funny and to the very common example of punctuality, but I think it's a very good example. In France, it's just, you know, part of the culture not to be on time, and it's part of, you know, normality or coolness or whatever it is to be, you know, late. And in Germany, it's not part of, you know, the not funny part of Germany to be on time. It's part of the culture to be on time. It's part of the respect that you have towards the people you're going to meet to be on time. And I've been, you know, even myself as half French, half German, I've been, you know, letting my French side, you know, win for too much time when I moved to Germany. And every time I was playing the card, yeah, but you know, I'm half French, so that's why. But you can play this card once, you can play it twice, but at some point you can make so many jokes you want. You have to adapt to the local culture, and that's really, I think, this balance I was mentioning earlier is, yes, you come here potentially as a French entrepreneur or as a French company who want to, you know, settle here and develop, and you're proud of what you are and what you bring. But on the other hand, there are some, you know, aspects of the way people interact, code of conduct, code of way of doing business, where there's some basic rules that you need to understand, you need to respect. You also need to, you know, wonder why those rules are there, and it's not to give that example, punctuality, or, you know, not crossing the street when at the red light. It's not because it's all boring and whatever. It's because there are some principles and some social principles behind that you need to understand, and then, you know, adapt to and respect while you're there, because you want to grow a business here, and you don't, you know, you're not in France at that point in time. So that took even myself quite some time to, you know, to pass this, it's, come on, it's cool, it's French, whatever, and to say, yeah, I have to adapt. And by the way, when you start being on time, it has a lot of advantages, even for someone who, you know, who's been used to the French culture.
Yeah, now thanks to Zoom, everybody's on time in all the world. No, and to answer your question, I think one great moment for us was just at the beginning of where we were here, was the Oktoberfest. And it was a nice intercultural moment, because we invited some of our best clients or freelancers from Spain and from France. And it was great. And you know, what's super interesting from coming from countries like France and Paris in particular is that you don't realize before that these, you know, you go to the Polaner tent and you have 10,000 people like dressed the same, like with their lederhosen and the other, and you don't know that from Paris, and we just, you know, the neighbor country, but you've France in the small place of France, a small village, you know, this folklore, and it's not folklore. It's like really culture, and it's really important. And to understand that is super important. Like I was on last Saturday. I was at Rewe, and I needed to buy some butter, and you know, it was 6 o'clock at night, and there was all kind of butter. So the Bavarian butter it was empty, like there was not anymore, at that time. The German buttery was half and the Irish buttery was full. So I think it's very important to understand that for Germany, and that, again, there's this strong culture of being, and very proud of being a German, and it's not that you cannot have success as a foreign company, but you need to understand a few things. And it's also not only German, it's very local, also very regional. So as a French, we don't understand that. It's very centralized, very unified. And you need to understand that, because your process of deployment to your go-to market, the people you would need, and the geographical expansion, maybe things are changing because of COVID, but you cannot apply, the same playbook that you had in France. So I think this intercultural, I would say, learning is super important, not only for me, being here, but bringing people from the HQ to see that, and to understand these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting story and interesting points. I think, it's already 7:30, I see. So I think it's also a good point for the end of this event. Thanks a lot also from my side for sharing all the insights, and I will give back to Sabine at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Ulrike. Well, first I want to thank Adrian and Vincent for all their insights. It was really great to have you on this panel, and I'm pretty sure our audience took quite a lot of best practices and do's and don'ts for hopefully their French-German expansion. So thanks a lot for making the time and sharing your stories. Thanks to my team as well. So Ulrike for moderating the Q&A, and Philippe and Marie for entertaining a little bit our audience also by asking them questions. So to understand a little bit how they've been experiencing also this international expansion, if they've done it. Thanks, Eva, also for joining us and partnering with us for this event. And for those who are looking to expand from Bavaria to France or to Paris, or from Paris to Bavaria, please contact Eva, because she's a very strong pillar in this French-German expansion. So hopefully we'll see a lot more companies doing this cross-border, and a lot more unicorn. And Adrian and Vincent, I wish you all the success you deserve again, and hopefully we'll probably see you again on the screens or on the newspapers for the next expansion. I would like to highlight also another event that Startup Grind is organizing, and I'll share my screen for this, which is also going in the same direction as our international expansion. Since tomorrow and Friday will take place another event, which is a Europe-Asia Connect. So Startup Grind is organizing with the participation of 84 chapters, which will talk about cross-border again, but between this time Europe and Asia continents for startups. You're going to have 100 plus speakers coming from 30 plus countries. Some of them you might know, like Guy Kawasaki from Canva. It's tomorrow and it's Friday. And I think Marie will paste the link of the Facebook event or of the website, so that you can also register for your tickets if you would like to join. And on such note, I would like, and my team and I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay safe, obviously, and we hope to see you again in January, so probably again virtually. But we hope that 2021 will be kind of the launch of a new format, which will be again back to face-to-face, and we're crossing our fingers to see you again soon. Voila. Thanks a lot for joining, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Bye-bye.